Digital payments giant PhonePe is making its big e-commerce foray with Pincode. It's a hyperlocal shopping app that will go live on ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce. Bengaluru will be the first city to go live with grocery and food, with more cities and categories to follow. With 450 million users, PhonePe claims to have 1 out of 4 Indians on its platform. 35 million merchants accept payments via PhonePe. Most of them do their business in Tier 2 cities and beyond. This large network could usher growth for ONDC, which has started to bring the next UPI moment for India. India's e-retail market is expected to triple from 50 billion in 2022 to 150 billion by 2027 as per a Bain report, with the shopper base likely to reach 400 to 450 million by 2027. The growth will be led by new online shoppers, primarily from Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. PhonePe, which dominates UPI with a 50% market share, knows what a platform like ONDC could do for it. PhonePe is also in the middle of a $1 billion fundraise that valued the company at a whopping $12 billion, far ahead of its payment peers, including Paytm. In a bid to grow beyond payment, the payments firm wants to use this war chest to grow its insurance, wealth management and lending verticals while it builds products on the India stack. Essential steps to hit 10,000 crore rupees in revenue and operational profitability, which the company plans to achieve by 2025. Hello and welcome to Young Turks, India's longest running show on startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Shereen Bhan, and joining me now to talk about Pincode and the road ahead for PhonePe is the company's founder and CEO, Sameer Nigam. Sameer, many thanks for joining us here on Young Turks. You know, there's a whole host of issues that I want to talk to you about. Lots of regulatory changes, but I'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about the aspiration as far as ONDC and your decision to launch Pincode. Why and how quickly do you intend to scale this?
NCR and Bangalore. We're launching first across Bangalore, across 150 pin codes here. And then after the top 3 metros, goal is to be in about 10 to 15 cities by year end. We would call that a win because, again, you have to digitize all the shops in these big cities. You have to somehow connect them with logistics networks that, honestly, we don't even know the names of. Many of them are just springing up. Hyperlocal delivery networks, national delivery networks. And you have to connect them using this sort of ONDC glue, which has not been tested at scale. So there's, it's an engineer's sort of dream to actually build networks like this, but on an operating side, there's so much to actually go through. So we're going to go slow and steady on this one.
Sameer, you also talk about making big investments to try and push the aspiration as far as ONDC is concerned. What could that mean? Quantify that for us.
I think you split the problem into 2 parts. One is we need to spend a lot of time and effort, the non-capital part, just cultivating the entire seller platform ecosystem and the logistics ecosystem. Just for Bangalore, for example, to go live in food, grocery, and pharma, we're working with 10 different seller platforms. It's about 20,000 stores already live. So each one of them has to get digitized. A lot of investment on the technology side by us, as well as to facilitate what our seller platforms are doing. I think then obviously there's going to be, if we find product market match, then there's going to be a considerable amount of marketing that will happen. We've been on IPL for 4 years. We'll be there soon again, next couple of days. Rest assured, if we see even an iota of sort of product market match early on, we will amplify this fast. Because I think there's been a lot of attempts at quick commerce, hyperlocal commerce, but at the guts of it, I feel like the small shopkeepers not being put at the center of the attempts. And I think if the local economy really does start biting, then I think there's a lot of investment. And I'll just say, I think UPI level investment because the market opportunity is that large. I won't quantify it.
UPI level investment. Okay, you won't want to put a number to it just yet. But, what is it going to mean in the near term as far as the expenses are concerned? The expenses have come in at about 3,706 crores. You've, of course, seen big spending on the IPL, the Cricket World Cup, etc. And what will this mean as far as burn is concerned as well? You're burning about 2.5 odd rupees at this point in time to earn a rupee of operating revenue. In terms of burn as well as expenses, what is all of this going to mean?
So I think numbers mask a couple of things. If you look at where the burn went or the accounting burn went, More than half of that actually was on the ESOPs that get sort of the liability that we have to account for. The second and largest single ticket item on spend for us last year was actually on the CapEx side, outside of marketing. We are now at a scale where we're processing over 150 million transactions a day. And it is important for us now to keep investing in infra. So we have 5 data centers that we actually spent on last year, about 20,000 servers added. So I think that investment on the CapEx side, below EBITDA, will continue. Our core business actually grew in triple digits for the 4th year straight, and I believe that we're still tracking for the same this year. So I'm not worried about the core payments business and ads business being profitable. We're getting there on schedule. In fact, 2023 sometime, I think we'll be there. But at a consolidated level, if I think of ONDC, we're not building a supply chain. We're not building a logistics fleet. We are actually just focused on building a great app experience that connects the sellers through the seller platforms. So at least on paper, it should be margin positive on each transaction from day 0. And in part, I actually think that this is why ONDC is so terribly exciting. By separating the roles of the seller platforms, the buyer platforms, keeping the pricing discounting out, you actually allow for margin positive commerce growth to happen. So I don't think ONDC will be a drag on our margins in any way.
Okay, you expect it to be margin positive on day 0 is what you said, Sameer, but and you caveated that, well, at least on paper. Sorry?
At the contribution margin, it should definitely be positive. I think the brand development will be an investment, but again, I mean, that's a long-term investment. That's why I said it's very much like UPI for us.
Time for us to head into a break here, but when we return, we continue our conversation with PhonePe's Sameer Nigam. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching the special edition of Young Turks. We're in conversation with Sameer Nigam of PhonePe on what the fintech landscape could look like in India in the next 5 years. Yeah, Sameer, let's talk about the changes that have come in over the last few days as far as UPI is concerned. What will the revenue impact be on account of the changes that have come in, especially as far as wallet loading fees are concerned, where PhonePe, like others, will have to pay a bank about 0.15% of the amount if it's over 2,000 rupees to load the wallet. What will the impact of the changes that have been announced by the NPCI mean for a company like yours?
I think it's positive across the board. It's a long time coming. So while there's a 0.15% wallet loading cost, we have a wallet business, there's a 1.1% guaranteed interchange that comes to us as a wallet issuer. So you're making money and you're making it through the UPI rails. Till now, historically, for the last decade, wallet companies have tied up with merchants directly and charged an MDR anywhere from 1.5% to 2.5%, I believe. We don't have as large a wallet business or play as some of our competitors, but we have launched full KYC wallets. We do want to foray further into it. And I think it's a positive sign that certain instruments, whether it's RuPay credit cards on UPI or wallets through UPI, the rails are aligned for monetization. And I think that's been a long time coming. I think it's a good sign for the industry overall.
You talked about the interchange, and you're right that it's been capped at 1.1%. What is the current interchange for you?
Right now, the wallet play doesn't involve an interchange because the issuer ties up with the shopkeeper and they pay them directly. So if you go today to a shop where you see a PhonePe or an Amazon Pay or a Paytm wallet accepted, that's a bilateral agreement. It doesn't flow through UPI. And there the interchange would, as I said, vary between 1 to 1.5%, 2% I've heard of at times. You've typically not gone past 1.5. And now the interchange is what we would get paid by the bank or whichever, how should I put this? If we have acquired a merchant and somebody else's wallet gets used, then we'll pay the 1.1%. But if we've got the wallet customer and they make a payment at the merchant, then we'll get paid 1.1%. And the acquirer will charge the merchant not the 1.1%. Again, my gut says this will get normalized or standardized pretty soon across the industry. You land at about somewhere between 1.4 to 1.6%.
Right. And this is something that is contentious, and we don't know whether the government will go down that road or not. But there is an IIT Bombay report that's been put out suggesting that there be a flat facilitation fee of 0.3% to fund the infrastructure linked to UPI. Do you believe that that is now going to have to be a reality that we need to contend with? As I said, no decision has been taken so far. We don't know whether the government will go down that road. But is that something that you believe we should be prepared for?
So I think it's inevitable, but my reasons for saying that are slightly different. I think there's a considerable amount of investment that's happening outside of the banking system. This is the fintech system, as we call it, both on the consumer side and the acquiring side. And for the last 20, 30 odd years, whether it's Visa, MasterCard, RuPay, whether it's net banking, somebody subsidizes that cost and incentivizes the players in the industry to make money. And it's traditionally been the merchant. So until zero MDR on UPI came along, the merchants were paying. The merchants continue to pay for Visa, MasterCard, they pay for all the wallet companies. Every other sector is also showing growth. So I'm still not convinced that merchants wouldn't pay a reasonable amount of interchange or MDR. So I'm hopeful it'll happen. I'm always hopeful. I think the government will perhaps relax MDR in waves. They haven't indicated anything, so this is just me conjecturing. But I think they'll relax in waves just to see, as they say, I mean, it's sort of a digitization tax, if you may, but broader shoulders bear the most tax. So maybe they'll start with the big merchants.
Well, I know you're hopeful, but Samir, hope is not a strategy. So let me also ask you about the other sword that's hanging on your head. And as of today, it's expected to come in from December 2024. It's been pushed to December 2024. The NPCI guidelines on capping market cap, which will impact companies like yours. And I know that you've said uncertainty doesn't really help plan, but you will now need to plan for December 2024. So what are you doing about that?
Well, again, my answer is no different than it was in December 2022. Short of denying consumers access to PhonePe's UPI services, which is the only direct way to reduce my market share, I can hope that more entrants jump on the bandwagon. I can hope that the existing players invest more to grow their own consumer base. I can stop advertising. It's been 2 years and counting. Beyond that, someone has to give me a playbook. So it's still the same response. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's not normal for an entrepreneur to sit there and think about how to actually reduce their growth. So you'll have to cut me some slack on this one. I don't have answers.
No, I feel your pain, by the way. I mean, it is an unfair ask of me to ask you how you plan to degrow your business, but that is what you're going to have to deal with unless there is some sort of miraculous change as far as this timeline is concerned, or a complete change of heart on the part of NPCI. But if that were not to be the case, what does that then do to all the targets that you've just spoken of, both in terms of growth and profitability?
I'm not worried about the profitability part because a lot of it is being fueled even by the current base. I think it takes us there. Pincode is a separate app. We're going to be foraying into the entire sort of wealth and stockbroking side of things. We have a license. We'll be entering there. That's going to be a new app. Lending scaling up really well for us on the merchant side to begin with. We'll enter consumer lending at some point. Insurance, I believe we're the fastest growing insurtech in the country right now on distribution. So I think we have a lot going for us. I'm not so worried on the profitability side alone. I'm worried about the growth of the UPI market itself. If the top two players, as things stand, are told you can't add more users, that's the guideline. Because honestly, only about a fourth of India is using UPI. It's about 350 million people. And what's actually more unnatural than asking people to slow their growth is to try and shape the market when there's only about 25% market adoption. It's like trying to shape the final sort of players in the telecom industry before 4G even launched. So we'll see.
Time for us to head to another break, but don't go anywhere. We're right back with PhonePe's Shereen Nigam to talk about the road to profitability, IPO and more. Welcome back. You're watching the special edition of Young Turks. We're in conversation with the founder of India's most valued fintech company, PhonePe. But what's the plan? You've talked about some of the verticals that you feel very confident about. But what's the plan as far as IPOing is concerned? Samir, 2023 was the expectation. The world has changed since you made that forecast. What can we now realistically expect?
So we'd said 5 years to be IPO ready in 2018. And I think if we were just looking at the payments core business, I think we are well positioned enough. Triple-digit operating growth, triple-digit revenue growth, very close to break even on the core biz. We would have thought about it. But you're right, lots changed. We had to spend a long year, and a lot of investors had to actually pony up a lot of tax for us to domicile, because we decided we want to list in India. So I think that need be done. And shout out to Walmart and all other investors. Almost 8,000 crores in tax, but I'm happy that we are now domiciled here. So you can sort of now definitely say PhonePe will IPO in India. That one part is done. Second, as you probably know, we've raised a bunch of money. We're in the middle of a fundraise, probably close by end of this month. So we're raising up to $1 billion, which I think will fund all of these new ambitions. We want to give it at least a couple of years for these businesses to get incubated, to sort of give us a good sense of how big they can get, how much more money needs to be deployed. So at this point, I'd say 24, second half, 25, we'll start looking at the right time for an IPO. Obviously, the market environment also has to change a bit. I don't think it's a good time for tech businesses to go public. And with the money in the bank right now to sort of fund our aspirations, I think we are well placed. We can write this out.
Yeah, I guess you're in a lucky position, or in a sweet spot, if I could call it that, at this point in time. You do have the luxury of time to take a call on when you would like to IPO because of the fundraise. But Samir, you talked about moving back to India and domiciling here, and I know that what you said in terms of the Ghar Wapsi tax resonated with a lot of people, and the hope was that perhaps in this budget the government would have brought in some cheer, but that was not to be. So how do you see things like this impact the growth and the evolution of India's startup ecosystem, especially in the context of companies looking at the possibility of moving out of India? You decided to come back, but many are actually still considering moving out. What is the single biggest message that you would like to send out to policymakers today?
I think the policymakers are definitely aware, and we've done our part in laying the concerns of the startup ecosystem that encourage people to go out in the first case. I will say, I think the venture capitalists, who are a very big stakeholder here in the decision of where to list startups, and therefore where to domicile them, are starting to sort of turn around. I think a lot of the VCs I talk to are heartened by the response to IPOs in the last couple of years in India. I think the market has depth now. So I think there's a meeting of the minds. The regulators and the government are also actively looking at ways to facilitate getting a bunch of folks back. I'm privy to some of the discussions, but I think good change is coming. If I take a 3 to 5 year view, I am very hopeful the best of Indian startups will find attractive valuations, a long retail market sort of queue of interest. I think people will come back. And I think new startups will have to move less and less to impress upon VCs to actually fund their companies. I think that dynamic is playing out. Entrepreneurs are starting to say, hey, we want to eventually list here, we want to build for India, we want to pay our taxes here. So I think the market's starting to come of age. This is India, so we do move slower to begin with, but we seem to catch up. We leapfrog. So I wouldn't be surprised if US and Singapore entities start listing in India in 5 years. We seem to always leapfrog at the end.
Well, let's hope we see that scenario playing out. As you point out, good change is coming, and we'll all be waiting to watch that. But you talked about IPOs, and you also talked about valuations, Samir. And I want to understand from you what we saw play out here in India with some of the new listings that we saw, including the likes of Paytm, and that dissonance between private market valuations and finally public market valuations. How have you read that story? What are the lessons that you take away from what we've seen happen there? I mean, today you're, valued more than double that of Paytm.
It's hard for me to comment on Paytm specifically, but I'll say this. One, I think a lot of these well-known brands, Paytm, Zomato, Nigam, and others, I think they ended up going public in India when the VC market was at its absolute peak worldwide. And if you see the carnage in the tech industry and the fintech industry worldwide in the public markets, unfortunately for these brands, which are very well-known brands, household names, the hit in India is less than the worldwide hit on tech stocks, but it's significant nevertheless. So I think there's merit to the fact that some of this is a global meltdown problem. I think the second one is the market not liking combination of either governance standards or business models. But again, let's look at where their businesses were a year ago. Let's look at the health of their core businesses today. And I would contend that while they sort of broke the wall and went public first, they got hit by the market, they're turning around fast. And I'll give the shout out to a Paytm. I think the business looks fundamentally more healthy today than it did 4 quarters ago when we look at it from a distance. So maybe the markets help the players grow up fast fiscally as well. It's a good thing.
No, I agree with you. I think the focus on profitability is much needed. And in many ways, we've seen that course correction play out over the last few months. But Samir, I remember in an interview some time back, you had talked about your experience in the music industry, and you said it was hard to make money in the music industry. Which is harder, the music industry or the fintech business in India, from a money-making perspective?
Oh, definitely the music industry. I'll still say that. I think the financial services market is so large, Shereen, that eventually I think all of us will make some money. It would be miraculous if all of India gets digitized and is using digital payments and neo-banking and insurtech and what have you, and none of us are making money. The big spoiler oftentimes is regulatory/government intervention, but I think we're starting to reach a new equilibrium. I genuinely do. I think you can see the valuations on the fintech side were large, frothy even, whereas all the profits are on the manufacturing side. And I think both are course correcting. I think it's going to be a rebalancing of the profits. There's going to be a rebalancing of investments. And I think we land in a good place. I'm always optimistic about this one. And I think fintechs will have their day in the next few years. It's not too far away. Again, I think...
Yeah, Samir, I just wanted to understand from you, and I know you're constrained to talk about what happened with Zest Money, but you've decided to not go through with that deal. But, in terms of plugging gaps that you believe you need to plug or looking at areas that you need to expand into, forget Zest Money for now because that's off the table. And, you can feel free to comment or in a manner that you can on that particular deal. But are you out there in the market scouting for others?
No. I think we're pens down. We made 4 successful acquisitions last year. Unfortunately, due to reasons I can't get into here, the Zest deal has, in fact, not gone through. But it's been more corp dev and corporate restructuring and fundraising activity than I'd like to deal with for a while. So at this point, we're launching Pincode. We're going to launch some other apps. We're going to build an app store. We're going to launch a host of services. So I'm really excited about going back on the drawing board with my designers and product managers and getting Raul and the engineers together and building cool stuff. It's been a while. we haven't been able to spend time on the drawing board since COVID started. It's either been fundraising or domicile changes or acquisitions.
So acquisitions off the table for now, at least off the drawing board for now. So what is being prioritized on the drawing board, Sameer? And in terms of the aspiration, you talked about neobanks and so on and so forth. I mean, is a bank an eventual aspiration for you?
I don't think I have a hairline left to do that in a lifetime, in this lifetime. I think I'm ambitious enough. We are ambitious enough as a company to try a whole bunch of stuff, but I think manufacturing financial products is not a forte. It's the same reason why PhonePe would not get into what we call the sort of conventional e-commerce businesses. I've spent many, many fruitful and happy years at Flipkart, but building a supply chain or building a lending operation are a lot of work. I think I like the intersection of consumer marketing, consumer product building and design personally. So launching new apps where someone's doing the heavy lifting, whether it's a seller platform or an insurance manufacturer, that's stuff we can do all day long. That's the stuff we enjoy. And I think that's the stuff we're good at, honestly. So, no, I like our banking system. We'll partner with them in everything.
But do you see a lot of consolidation within? Do you see a lot of consolidation within the space, given the regulatory changes, as well as the regulatory uncertainty and the macro uncertainty as well?
Almost certainly. Said this at an industry at the in Kochi recently. There was the entire sort of payments industry. Then I was just saying that the margins are so razor thin, either by policy intent or by market forces, that you can't have 150 people in the payments industry in India. You can't have 100 people trying to sell insurance in India at the same time. The market's not deep enough right now. And as much as we like talking about long-term market penetration, the margins need to play out. So I think capital will consolidate around a few players. I mean, it's cyclical as well, right? So 2021, 2015, there's people getting funded every single day, sometimes twice a day. And then you have the winters. I think winters are good because you learn how to run lean, you shed unnecessary cost, you shed unnecessary ambition even. And I think that will force some consolidation as well. It's inevitable.
Well, Sameer, we are going to have to take another very quick break, but don't go anywhere. We are back in a moment with more on Young Turks. Welcome back. You're watching Young Turks. We're in conversation with the founder of PhonePe, Sameer Nigam, on the growth ahead. You know, Sameer, I want to understand from you, you talked about consolidation, but you also gave us the example of the telecom sector. Effectively, we're down to four players in the telecom sector in India today. So what could that potentially mean then when we talk about the fintech landscape over the next 5 years?
I think, again, I think fintech's too broad, but if you look at sectors like digital payments, acquiring, insurance distribution, if you look at each individual sort of sub-industry, I think consolidation is inevitable. The larger the market, the more capital and the more entrepreneurs will chase it. But there's a market life cycle, and we saw this in telecom at its very best. We had 15, 20 of the world's biggest names, domestic names, but eventually service does come into play. And I think in our world, product affinity or app affinity will come into play very quickly as well. It's the nature of the internet economy. I keep telling people this, I keep breaking hearts, but if a user can try out a service by downloading an app, which takes 10 seconds, people will try every service. People who use PhonePe also use a Google Pay, also use a Paytm. They've tried 20 other apps. And at some point, people will just gravitate towards whatever experience suits them best or they like the most. That doesn't take very much time in the digital world. It takes less time than the physical world. So I think consolidation is inevitable. It has to happen.
Yeah, and it is the rule of three that we see playing out across sectors, and that still holds true. But Samir, you talked about capex, and we're also talking about your fundraise, and you spoke about the kind of investments that you will require now with Pincode. But what would capex look like at this point in time for you over the next 5 years, given the investments that you've already made, but also anticipating the new verticals that you intend to grow out?
5 years is tough because I think it's almost linear to the growth of digital payments. I think Pincode and all other services combined take up a sliver of the infrastructure compared to payments just because of sheer volume. I wish 150 million people were buying insurance from us every day. My response to your IPO question would have been yesterday. But I think if payments really does get to 1 billion people in 5 years, we will probably end up spending just by ourselves somewhere between $500 million to $1 billion in additional capital in the next 5 to 7 years. My current guess is somewhere between. My current guess is over 5 years is somewhere $500 million. Yes, 4,000 crores or 5,000.
Okay, half. Okay, 4 or 5,000 crores. And I want to come back now to the ONDC plan, because what does it feel like? You're up against Flipkart. You've been separated at the hip, so to speak. But what does that feel like now as you go up against them?
I have answered this question in various different forums, both privately as well as publicly. I don't think we're going up against Flipkart because I think the value proposition, much is being made about ONDC sort of competing with Flipkart and Amazon. As you'll see with Pincode, we are not facilitating cross-state or even pan-India transactions. We don't believe a federated model will work with that. I can't set the expectation with a shopkeeper in Koramangala, Bangalore, that somebody sitting in Vasant Kunj in Delhi is going to be able to order items in real time and have them delivered by a logistics player I don't even know of. This is literally real-time network pulls. So I think Flipkart solves a very different problem extremely well. They have one of the most sophisticated supply chains in the country. They have one of the most sophisticated logistics companies in the country. And I think when people are looking for branded goods, or trying to buy a 50,000 rupee phone, I think they will actually go to a Flipkart or an Amazon. I think local market dynamics are very different. And here, I don't think anyone's really cracked hyperlocal in a meaningful way, not in grocery anyway. So we'll see. I'm sure there's areas where we'll end up competing a little bit. But for the most part, I think we're solving a different problem. We're trying to create a hyperlocal / quick commerce alternative that's inclusive.
Okay, an inclusive quick commerce model is what you're hoping to roll out. But, Samir, and I think the jury's still out on whether quick commerce is going to work profitably, and will it be sustainable? I wanted to understand your thoughts on that. You already spoke about the wafer-thin margins in this business. What's the take on quick commerce?
So I think there's a couple of things that are just totally flawed. The quick commerce model that is VC-backed involves people price cutting or giving discounts, heavy discounts. And the margin is so thin. The average order, let's take an average order offline, it's about 300 rupees. Even if you're charging 18, 20%, 22%, you're barely making enough to cover the cost of discounting the logistics and then discounting on price. In ONDC, one of the things we liked about it is by design, you can't touch the price of the shopkeeper. I actually don't believe that model works in quick commerce at all, so I'm happy. We have no role to play in price. Second, I think COVID changed the paradigm where people would not pay for delivery to where people are used to paying for delivery, for fast food delivery, pharma, and other sectors. So again, I think we can operate on much smaller margins because we are not investing in the supply chain. And I think the businesses and the seller platforms can make money because they're not having to price discount aggressively. When I say inclusive, I'm actually saying, I think the landed cost to the customer may be 15, 20 rupees more than it is compared to today's quick commerce apps. But I think that this will be a much healthier ecosystem and therefore it will sustain, it won't be cyclical. I hope so.
Right. Right. You spoke about the course correction that we've seen in the ecosystem as companies now focus on profitability. Now, what we've also seen happen globally at this point in time is a significant shake-up with the large players cutting down on costs, letting go of people. And of course, the era of zero interest rates is over for the foreseeable future. What will be the implications of that for India, for the Indian startup ecosystem in the near term? We've already seen many of the edtech companies laying off and so on and so forth. Do you see that we're at the start of a painful cycle that we will see play out in India as well?
I think India saw, and unfortunately, but saw a bunch of correction during COVID, where people just had to actually downsize because a lot of the startups in India are still very nascent. The ecosystem is nascent, and it's equity funded, not profit funded. I do think, however, it's very different than the large big tech platforms in the US doing massive layoffs worldwide. In part, honestly, as an entrepreneur, I find it a little obnoxious because these are very large, very profitable companies with very large ambitions. They're investing in the ambitions, but they're laying off the people. So I personally don't subscribe to it. I'm glad that the Indian founders are not following suit that way. I think as a market overall, also, I think we're a little more empathetic. I'm not for protectionism at all, but I also don't like sort of this perversion between record profits and record layoffs. I don't understand that one. I don't think India will do that.
Well, we certainly hope so. And I have to say that I tend to agree with you, at least. I'm still yet to understand fully why we're seeing this play out, record profitability, and yet the kind of layoffs that we are seeing with these global tech companies. But before I let you go, Samir, I mean, you've been around, you've seen many cycles, you've built a sustainable business. To many startups who are watching and founders who are watching, who haven't been on the rodeo for as long as you have, what would your advice be to them?
I think 23, 24 years into this sector, a couple of rules that have worked consistently. Culture trumps business cycles because you can ride out whether it's a COVID or it's market conditions. I think you can ride out bad market conditions if you're consistent in your culture. Don't let market cycles distort your culture in the down cycles. And I'll give you two live examples of where we've seen this work for us. COVID, when most people started laying off, we actually said we're not going to lay off anybody. We're super proud of the fact we've never done a layoff here. And the company reciprocates because right after that, when everyone was saying, let's work from home forever, we told everyone, hey guys, we need you to come back into the office. That's when we had a collective best. And 98% of people are back in the office. So I think if you do right by people when the going is tough, everyone does right by the company and puts the collective before the individual. I know it's old school, but it still works, guys. And I think the second is you have to be able to say no to your investors, especially early stage, if you're feeling bullied to grow at any cost, because it's very high to fix your margins when the burn's at its peak. It's much easier to grow a little slower. And we've done that. I mean, people are talking about our market cap on UPI today, but fact of the matter is that nobody gave us a chance for the first 4 or 5 years, and we were still growing at the same rate. We've never had 1 year where somebody can say, oh, they broke out, or 1 year where they really did badly. It's a journey. And save your chips for when they matter the most.
Well, Samir, I have to say, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for not just talking to us about your plans with ONDC, but more importantly, taking us through what the landscape for the fintech business in India is likely to look like over the next few years, and also sharing the do's and don'ts that I hope entrepreneurs are listening to. But thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it, and we wish you and your team the very best of luck.
Thank you, Shereen. Pleasure.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Young Turks. From all of us here on the program, goodbye and many thanks for watching.